Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I haven't figured out yet what I'm going to call this video. It is February 17th, 2023, and I am going to a flea market of sorts tomorrow. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am actually not going there to buy, although I must admit, chances are I will see something that I can't resist. I'm going to a Hamfest. So for those of you who do not know what a Hamfest is, no, it's not a bunch of bacon and pork and stuff like that. It doesn't pay homage to pigs. It is actually a flea market swap meet for ham radio or amateur radio operators. And for those of you who don't know, originally I went to a vocational technical high school for electronics, and ever since way back then, I've always had a healthy interest in electronics. And now I have a healthy interest in vintage electronics because basically the stuff that I was seeing back when I was in high school many, many moons ago, today when you see that stuff, it's vintage. Like me. So basically I have this weakness for this kind of old electronic junk, and I buy old CB radios, old ham radio equipment, old test equipment, and just sometimes just odd electronic things. And I can't resist it when I find a deal. Well, the problem is a lot of that stuff, I buy it and it needs work. And the idea was that eventually I would find the time to actually work on some of this stuff and fix it up and then either keep it as a collectible or sell it. Well, I've amassed quite a bit of stuff over the past several years, and it's getting to the point now where, quite frankly, I just want to unload some of it because I just don't think I'm ever going to get to it. So I figured what I'll do is I'm going to pay the 20 bucks to set up a table at a Hamfest that's about 45 minutes away from here and throw out some stuff and see what I can do, make a little cash hopefully. So what made me think about doing this was the fact that one of the items I picked at an estate sale a few months back was this Hallicrafters shortwave radio that I think I featured a video on. And the thing is that thing actually, it needs a little bit of work done to it, but it works now. You can plug it in, throw an antenna on it, and tune stations, listen to shortwave. And it's kind of a neat model. It's got a large meter on the front. Well, let me show you. So there it is. It's a Hallicrafters SX99. It's in, by no means is it in mint condition. But if I was willing to box this up and ship it, I could sell this on eBay and definitely make a decent profit off of what I paid for the thing. The problem is I just wanted to unload it locally so I didn't have to go through the shipping. Well, I put this thing on Facebook, and several people liked the post, signifying that they thought it was a good deal, or that they liked that radio, or I don't know what it meant that they liked it, because no one came by and gave me the money. I think I put it up for $75 or best offer. So I thought that was a pretty fair price based on what I've seen them sell for. And again, it's not mint, but it works. It's not fried. It doesn't have a bad transformer or something horrible wrong with it. And the reality is I put 75 just figuring somebody might come by and offer me less, and I would probably take 50 or 60 bucks for it at this point just to get it out of here. So hopefully I can sell this at the Hamfest, along with several other things I'm going to tack on to this little trip. And one of the things I want to do is just try and do quick evaluations on some of the other things so I can be able to say with a straight face whether or not it's DOA, needs work, or does it come on. If it's a transceiver, does the receiver work but the transmitter doesn't, or whatever. Or at least test it into a dummy load if it does transmit. So without further ado, let's start looking at some junk. All right, so the first item I threw up here on the bench was an acquisition probably within the past year. And I think I may have featured this on a video, one of the pick videos, and kind of showed it off a little bit. But this is a Beckman Model 6240 E-Put and Timer. Now, I bought this completely as is, fully expecting that it wouldn't work and that it was no good. And the reason why I bought it was I noticed that it has 5 Nixie tubes in here. And for those of you who don't know what Nixie tubes are, just Google Nixie tube project and you'll see all of the neat clocks and things that people make out of these tubes. So these are actually vacuum tubes that have grids that can glow, and when the proper pin is energized, it will glow a grid that has the shape of a number, so it can actually show you a numerical readout. The Nixie tubes that are in here right now at present are made by they're NL842s, and they're made by the National Electronics Incorporated of Geneva, Illinois. So the shocking thing about this, when I got it here on the bench and fired it up, was the fact that it actually seems to work. So you notice when it fired up, it just threw up a number, and that's kind of random. So you have to reset it because it is a counter. So the way this is designed to work is that you would actually have this hooked up to a circuit, and you would have a trigger that would trigger when it starts counting and when it stops counting. Now, because it's able to count the duration of something, you can easily count the duration of a sinusoidal waveform. So by default, it can be a frequency counter. So the first thing you do is you hit reset, and now it's all zeroed. So there we go. If I put it in frequency mode, now it lights up Hz for hertz. So I'm not going to play around with this too much. I'm going to sell it, just the way it is. I'm going to, basically say, hey, the thing's not DOA. There's two things I noticed on the inside of this unit that I thought were interesting, to say the least, if not comical. But let me show you the two things that gave me a giggle. Or let me put it to you this way, at the very least, things that made me go, So the first thing is the giggle. On the back here, somebody wrote with a Sharpie, a red Sharpie, high voltage on PC boards, Bill, parentheses, ouch. So some technician named Bill, who had this apartment, was working on it. Maybe he can learn the hard way that there is high voltage present on that PC board. And that makes sense because the sockets for the tubes, for the Nixie tubes, the sockets are right on the board. So there's plate voltages going to those tubes, several hundred volts probably. The second little thing that made me go, is on this side where the power transformer is, near the input circuit. Look at this cap. I have a little trouble focusing, but that cap has gone nuclear. This big silver cap right here, it's got some black on it, but that's just residue from that other one going critical. Look at that nice big filter cap. Nothing to indicate that that isn't original, and it's a Sprague. That's a testament to the quality of Sprague components back in the day. Oh, this next cream puff I've got here is something I picked a couple of years ago at least. It's been sitting down here just getting older. And this is a Tektronix Model 2236 oscilloscope. It's a dual channel oscilloscope. I think it's 100 megahertz. Yeah, so it's a 100 megahertz oscilloscope. What's unique about this model is that it's I think it's one of the first models of Tektronix scopes to incorporate a digital readout. So kind of a neat thing. I had thought about keeping this thing seriously, but the reason why I decided not to is because those of you who watch my channel may have seen a while back I showed my Sencor SC61 waveform analyzer, as it's called. Now that is a 60 megahertz scope, but when Sencor sold that scope, they did an interesting thing with the marketing. They said it was a 60 megahertz scope usable to 100, which I think probably it gets pretty unstable after you get pretty high up there. Whereas this really, is a 100 megahertz scope. So that's what this has got going for it. My SC61 has an LCD readout above the screen that's much larger that I like. And the other thing that's really snazzy about the Sencor scope, its digital readout, is its ability to measure several functions directly through the same probe. This actually has test lead banana jacks on the side here, just like a regular multimeter. So you would actually plug in a separate set of leads. when you want to use this as a DC voltmeter. This was sitting in a warehouse in storage. I bought it as is, not knowing whether it worked or not, took a chance on it, brought it down here to the shop, hooked it up, fired it up, and it worked perfectly. Now, let's see if it's still working after sitting for a while. So it goes through a little self-test, I guess, or something. Oh, we've got a trace. That's good. And let's see, one of these is going to be vertical position. There we go. So that's channel 1 right here. And now if we flip this over to channel 2, now you see this position works. So I've got to switch the probe over to the channel 2 input, and we should be able to get pretty much the same waveform. Oh, bring the amplitude up a little bit, and that's running away because I have to switch the trigger over to 2. There we go, channel 2. And I would say that is a good working oscilloscope. These buttons right here are all for the digital display. So I've got it on DC voltage right now. Got a little battery sitting here, and let's see what we got. 9.26 volts. Well, that sounds like a pretty good battery. I think it works. I like it. I'm gonna put a, I'm gonna put a respectable price on this because, quite frankly, I don't have a problem with keeping it. Wait, didn't I just say I was hoarding stuff that I'm never gonna get around to using? Oh, yeah. Next item I think I'll send down the road is this vintage Fluke 8021 multimeter. It has gotten better since I've owned it. When I first got this meter, I noticed that the LCD display seemed like it had some bleed to it. Numbers are actually a lot crisper now. I also have a newer battery in there too, and I think when this battery gets weak, that problem gets worse. But other than that, it works perfectly fine. All of the functions work, and I put new probes on them. They're not, or are these good ones? I probably got more money tied up in the probes than I do in the meter. Oh, these are Yokogawa probes. I don't think I'm going to take less than 20 bucks for this thing. Good working DVM with new probes, even though they're, I don't know, Yokogawa. Are those cheap or good? I can't remember. Well, I guess if I was still current with the electronics industry, I would probably know that those Yokogawa are actually a premium meter lead. At least their meter, the DVMs that they sell are premium, so leads are probably good quality too. They kind of felt good quality. So I found this really ratty pair. I'll throw in with these just to show that they work. I mean, what do you want for a $20 DVM, right? As long as I'm looking at my surplus DVMs here, I might as well think about sending this one down the road. This is a Fluke 77. Alright, so I've got actually a brand new pair of Fluke leads with this that I had picked up somewhere. And I never got around to actually using this. I just put a fresh battery in it, and seems to be working perfectly fine. This is the Model 77 with the original safety case there or whatever. It doesn't have this thing. Sometimes this gets broken off, the stand. So, nice meter. I guess I'm going to finally let go of this meter too. This meter and I have gone through a lot of miles together. This is one of my favorite meters of all time. This is the third Fluke meter that I ever owned for handheld. And this is the model, what the heck is this now? This is a Model 87. So this is a nice rugged meter, and it's always served me well. And then eventually what ended up happening with this meter was either the common connection or the positive lead connection over here on the board broke. And what I ended up doing was I robbed the good one out of the milliamp microamp input and replaced it with that. That way I could continue to use the meter, because I never used the microamp milliamp input or the amperage input for that matter. I always just used this as a AC DC voltmeter and for resistance, and it's got a nice continuity feature. Really handy meter. It's got this graphical bar on the bottom there, so if you're looking at a reading that's wavering a little bit, you can kind of see it better instead of the numbers just dancing around. So it kind of gives you almost like some of the benefits you get with an analog meter. And it also has this min-max feature, which is handy. So if you're dealing with an intermittent, you can actually monitor a point, and you can set it to log the minimum and the maximum voltage seen during a test duration. So great meter. Here's a little bench power supply that I picked up a while back. It's kind of a neat little sucker. It's an import. Not going to sell this. I still haven't given up on the fantasy of being able to get my electronics test bench put together and get back to actually doing something with some of this stuff. I don't want to get rid of everything, but I am going to use it just to blow through a few of these meters that I have that I've picked up over the years. Again, I get them, really cheap, and I can't resist them. This is a blast from the past. This is a Micronta analog multimeter. Analog multimeter, and it's probably not the exact model, but it's very similar to probably the first meter I ever bought myself when I was like 14 years old at our local Radio Shack. Some of you may not even know what a Radio Shack is, but it was a chain of stores owned by the Tandy Corporation, and they sold a lot of electronic hobbyist stuff back in the day. A lot of these meters, I'm not going to bother testing the resistance feature on them, because that would involve opening them up and putting batteries in them, and especially like the Simpsons that I'm going to test, those have multiple batteries that you need for different things, and so it's just not worth it for me to bother doing that. I'm just going to see if these work at least on DC voltage. Although probably if they're blown out, if there's a problem, it's probably going to be with the resistance feature of these, because that was the problem with these back in the day. These aren't forgiving like a DVM, auto ranging or anything like that. If you left this on the resistance scale and forgot, and then put this on a voltage test point, chances are you're going to smoke your multiplier resistors inside there. And worst case scenario is it won't work at all, or if you just smoke them to the point where they change value, then all of your resistance measurements are going to be wrong. So full scale deflection should be 2.5 volts. Not bad. Try the 10 volt scale. Not bad. All right, I'm satisfied. What do you think? Try and get $5 or $10 for that? So when I was a freshman in the electronics shop at the school, they would only let us use these old Simpson 260s. We blew these up regularly. So the one thing that we learned about these meters that we came to learn over time was how to take them apart and repair the meters. Usually change out the multiplier resistors in there. 10 volt scale, DC, and that is kaput. Nothing happened. It could even be just a fuse, but I don't really want to bother with it. Yeah, this Simpson's kind of a nice one because it's got the original leather case, and this is a 270. Ooh. Don't ask me what the difference is. Matter of fact, I couldn't even tell you for sure whether or not they were 260s or 270s, but they were Simpson analog meters just like these that we used back at school. All right, left on the resistance scale so you can fry it. Yay, that one works. 9.8 here, 10 volts here. Good enough. This thing's old as dirt. 50 volt scale, can max that out because we know the supply only goes up to 18. Well, I like it. All right. There's a very good possibility that this meter is fine. Of course, like I said, I'm not checking the resistance. That would involve, my main problem is finding a D-size battery around here. I remember where I got this. I got this at the used tool store on the junk table. He has a table where he throws a bunch of junk tools and stuff, and every week the price of the stuff on that table goes down. It's like it starts at like $6 per item and goes down. And I think there was a week where it was the $6 item table, and I spotted this green puff. This is an early Simpson meter. This is a Model 350. I'm sorry, 390. It's a Model 390, but I thought it was kind of neat for several reasons. One of which is that it's got the original model operator's manual with it. It's got its little case. It's got these funky old leads. Check these out. The cloth cover. Okay. What's wrong with this picture? A plug to plug it directly into the mains, as the people in Europe say, right? So you get your line voltage into this thing, and what do you got at the other end? Oh, you got these metal dudes just flapping in the wind. So clearly what the intention of what was, manufacturer's intention was that you wired these all up to the binding post before you even thought of plugging this in. So you know how I was saying how these could just be left flapping in the breeze, and if you plug this in, they'd be live. They could short against each other, or, you know, touch human skin, make things real interesting. You know, it kind of makes me think about how things were, that you basically, if you were a moron in the old days, you probably weren't going to survive very long. We kind of moron-proofed a lot of stuff. Well, anyways, next time you see an old person that's still alive, you know, you should give them props, because somehow they survived all of this stuff. Anyways, this is kind of neat. So we could plug this in, but then it's got an outlet right on the back. And the way this works is that allows you to make a series measurement of the current flow. So that's why we get the 4 wires that hook up. I've got it hooked up to the range that allows me to measure voltage up to 150 volts, AC only, and current up to 3 amps. So we'll let's see how this works out. All right, so what I've done is I've plugged in this power supply into the back of that strange outlet, and I haven't had to touch anything, and it's already telling me the voltage. So it immediately displays the voltage. I'm looking at the 150 volt scale, and it looks like I've got 100 and just over 120 volts, which is what I would expect, because I am in the United States. And then we've got 2 buttons down here. We've got a amp button, so if I press this, it's going to show me 0 because I'm not drawing any amperage yet. And turn my power supply on now. Hit the amps button again, and I still don't get anything, which tells me, well, either this thing's drawing very little current. You know what? Let me find something that does get a little bit more current draw to it. You know, you wouldn't believe how hard it is to find something that has a non-polarized plug, because this thing's old, so it won't accept a polarized plug, and no ground pin, so I can't use like a lot of the other stuff I've got laying around here. Anyways, here's my universal Weller soldering gun. So if I pull the trigger on this and I press down the amps button, it's drawing about an amp. Yeah, just under an amp. I don't know if that's correct or not. Although wattage, about 90 watts. So I think there may be an issue with the accuracy on this thing after all these years, but it does actually do something. And I just read in the manual, apparently you can use this for DC voltage. You just hook it up the same exact way. So they must have a diode in there, and they must be rectifying it so that you can just throw the AC on there. Oh well. Kind of a neat old meter. Last couple of these that sold on eBay sold for $40 and $60 without the case and the manual. And I think I didn't even see leads in some of those listings. So apparently that's a rare little meter. I'm going to go out on a limb here and make a prediction right now that nobody offers me anything for this meter, or like more than 20 bucks for it. Which means I'm going to have to sell this the hard way on the bay. Got one more Simpson cream puff here. Notice this leather case is embossed Bell System, and I believe that would indicate that this was used by the phone company. There is something written on the inside here. Looks like a guy's name and town. Well, he's from Air, Massachusetts. But this is a Simpson teledata. So kind of a funky little deal here. So the nearest I can figure is that this is only used for resistance checks. It just says ohms, and it's got an on-off switch. It's got a press for ohms. It's got a battery adjustment, and it's got a polarity switch reverse. So I think this was designed for testing wiring and switching systems and telephone exchanges and stuff like that. So I don't really know much more about it than that. And again, because it's not going to do anything without a battery in it, and for all I know, it doesn't work at all. I'm just gonna throw that on the table and try and get, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks for it, I guess. Well, talk about a blast from the past. Bearcat 210 scanner. Oldie but a goodie. This is a real classic. I remember when I was a teenager, my best friend, his whole family was really involved with the fire department. His two older brothers were both on the fire department. As soon as he was old enough, he was on the volunteer fire department, and then eventually became a firefighter, and then eventually became he became an EMT, and then he became a paramedic. And he became a paramedic when we were in high school. He just got the manual and self-studied himself. Self-studied himself? What the hell does that mean? You know what I mean, right? I mean, literally, he didn't have classes or go take a course or anything. He got the book that helps you study for the exam, and he just sat in his room and studied like crazy, and then he went and took the exam and passed it. He's still a paramedic to this day in a different town, but talk about having a focus, really knowing what you want to do for a career and going for it. Anywho, this is the scanner that I remember gracing their home. So this is the Bearcat 210, and what's cool about this one is it still works perfectly. It has the cool old scanning feature where the numbers just cycle past. I'm hoping the frame rate doesn't make that look weird, but if it would go back and forth, then it would be like the Cylons in the old Battlestar Galactica, which would be really cool. But anyways, I don't have a rod antenna to screw into it.
The report from Pittsburgh was not available.
There we go.
The report from Westfield was not available.
Really?
In eastern Massachusetts, the report from Boston was not available.
Really?
The report from Bedford was not available.
Really?
In southeast Massachusetts, the report from Norwood was not available.
Oh, well, that's...
In southern New Hampshire, the report from Keene was not available.
Oh, really?
The report from Nantucket was
I swear this was just telling us what the local weather was before I got the antenna on there. So prices, sold prices on these are all over the place on eBay, but you know, a respectable 10 or 15 bucks for this is about all that I could hope for, with the fact that it's missing this antenna. Case in point, if I want to buy the replacement antenna for this, it's going to run me about 10 bucks. So much for that. Well, as long as I'm getting rid of surplus scanners, I guess maybe I'll part ways with this Bearcat 550A. Alright, well, I just got a BNC extension on here, and this is my Starrett antenna.
It's cool. Near steady temperature in the upper 30s. South winds 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 30 miles an hour.
How about police?
Show me clear. Place motors.
There we go. But see, this isn't a trunk tracking radio, so you know, you're gonna get like half of the conversation. And all right, well, that works. I have more function generators than I need, so we'll get rid of this one. This is a data pulse from the Systron Donner Corporation, and it's a model 411 function generator. I believe this does work. And I've got these two, a pair. This one's got a little bit of damage to it, to the case. A couple of old Fluke frequency counters. These kind of have an interesting look to them. I don't know what series this is, but I used to own a bench DVM that looked identical to this. In fact, when I first saw these, I thought they were bench DVMs, and then I quickly realized, oh no, look, there's no banana jacks. It's got a BNC input. Oh, because it's a frequency counter. So these are Fluke 1900A multi-counters. Come here. Ooh. Well, I just wasted quite a bit of time off camera because I kept thinking that those two frequency counters that I had there were bad because I couldn't get anything to register on either one of them. And it turns out it's because not one, but both of those function generators that I had were bad. They weren't putting anything out. The one of them that had the sweep function, the sweep generator part was working. I was able to determine that by putting it on the oscilloscope. But as soon as you switched it over to the regular output, it was dead. And the other one, the WaveTech, that was just strictly a function generator, voltage controlled, and that has nothing coming out of it also. So I'm going to sell those two as is. This is something, a real blast from the past. I got this quite a while back, and unfortunately, the guy I got it from, he had no idea where the front panel was. So this is missing the front panel. What's cool about this thing is that this is a piece of test equipment that Hickok, who are known for making really good tube testers, made back in the day. And what it is the idea was that it was a modular system. So the way it worked was this module right here, this whole part slides out. So this is the module for the DP200 capacitor plug-in module. So that, basically you plug this into this unit and it turns this unit into a capacitor tester. But then they had other modules you could purchase that would allow you to do other things. Like I think there was one that made it a frequency counter, one that made it a voltmeter, things like that. So the front panel being missing kind of makes the switch here a little dicey because the switch was screwed to the panel. But what's cool about this thing is that just like that old counter, this thing also seems to be working. And this also has 3 of these Nixie tubes, which makes it kind of neat. So again, unfortunately, probably going to end up selling this thing dirt cheap just to somebody who might want the Nixie tubes, because I'll never find the front panel. Although I do occasionally see on eBay these modules come up for sale. So I could maybe sell this module, I don't know. So I have a 47 microfarad cap here. Let's see if this thing still works. I believe last time I checked it, which was a couple of years ago, it was still working. 45, and now 48. 48. 48. Kind of does this thing where it keeps retesting. So it looks like it's stabilizing at 48, which is beautiful because electrolytic caps like this, they're notorious for having pretty high tolerances. So, all right, so that thing works. All right, so I have a couple of these vacuum tube voltmeters, and this is the RCA Senior Volt Ohmist, the model WV98C, and then I also have a B&K model 177. So these are both very similar as far as what they do. These are very high impedance input multimeters, and They're great for making voltage measurements in RF circuits where normally you might have to worry about a meter loading down the test point because of the input impedance of the meter being too low. Modern digital voltmeters tend to have very high input impedance, so these kind of became antiquated, I guess, for lack of a better term, or obsolete because of that fact. But what I like about these is they have these nice big meters, and when you're talking about like setting something like a bias in an RF circuit and you're talking about, you know, you're dealing with millivolts, it's kind of nice instead of having numbers jumping around to have a needle that you can actually focus on. So I foresee myself still wanting to use one of these. Unfortunately, one of these I had for a while, and I don't know what happened to the probe. The other one, I bought it without the probe, and I don't even remember which is which. I think this is the one I've had right along. So I'm just going to throw some power into them, just make sure they both turn on and that they're not DOA. And I'll probably take the RCA with me to the show and see if anybody wants to buy it cheap. And I'll keep the B&K and maybe do a little bit of refurbish work on that and order a replacement probe. They do still sell the, you can get a cheap aftermarket probe for these on eBay. So there's definite signs of life out of both of these, which is great. And I don't have a probe, so I'm not going to bother doing any tests on these. Again, I'm just going to put this one back on the shelf for now and take that one with me. Well, this next item I snagged just this past November at a swap meet, not known for electronics, but there was a guy there with just all kinds of junk, and I happened to spot this thing. I got pretty excited when I saw it because I recognized the name, Drake. This is a company that makes really nice amateur radio gear, and what this is this is a Drake Model PS7 power supply. So this is a massive regulated power supply for a Drake radio. So when I saw this, I talked to the guy because I said, hey, I said, you know, you get any more stuff that came out of the house this came out of? And he said no, that's all that was there. So unfortunately, no radio. I have no idea if it's any good at all. All it has coming out of it is this one big cord that's supposed to have some sort of a plug on it, plug into the radio, and instead it's been cut off and it's just got two wires hanging off. And instead of a red and a black, it's got a red and a brown, which don't ask me why, but it does. So I have no idea what's going to happen when I plug this in. Maybe nothing, maybe some fireworks, maybe who cares. Alright, here goes nothing. A little bit of a current surge on power up, and a slight hum would indicate to me that this thing's actually on. I'm seeing 1.3 volts and climbing slowly coming out of this thing. So I would have reason to believe that this is a sick puppy. So I'm looking on the back of this unit, and there's a couple of the connections here. There's what almost looks like an RCA type jack that says 13.6 volts DC, and another one like an RCA jack that says ALC. But more interesting to me is a little 2-pin plug socket for a 2-pin plug that says Vox Relay. So that is Vox Relay. I'm wondering whether or not there isn't supposed to be a control voltage sent to this socket that turns this power supply on, that energizes this. That would be nice if it's just a matter of that. If I knew for sure, then I could just jumper that and see if it energizes, but I don't know enough about this. So this is something I'm just going to leave to the guys there at the Hamfest. I guarantee you that somebody there is going to probably know exactly how this is supposed to work. I just got a couple other random things here. This is my my ICO Model 950 capacitor tester. It's actually a capacitance comparator bridge, but I never used it for measuring capacitance. It just is a really good leakage tester for older electrolytic caps. It's able to generate quite a bit of voltage, so that makes it it can be a little dicey, but if you're testing those big old electrolytics, it works great for that. A lot of guys use modern testers that have ESR and things like that built into them, which I have Sencor Z meters, which are probably the finest capacitor analyzers ever made, but they're prohibitively expensive, so most hobby type electronics guys aren't going to bother investing in one of those. But I also have the Sprague Telemic, which is an also legendary capacitor analyzer comparator, and I picked up recently a B&K capacitor analyzer. So I'm lousy with capacitor testers, so this is the runt of the litter, so to speak. So I'm going to send this down the road. I know this works perfectly fine. This has one of these electric eye tubes, these tubes that has the nice green glow, and the window opens and closes. So it's kind of a neat thing to watch. And then this is an old Variac that I picked up cheap. These are great for bringing up the AC voltage into the main power supply slowly on older equipment. And I've got my Sencor Variac, so PR57 power right, so I don't really need one of these. So I'm going to send this down the road. This looks like hell, but it works perfectly fine. It's got the AC power indication light here. It's got 2 taps, so you can even over voltage it if you wanted to. And it's a grounded one. And I had an older one of these I sold a little while back that actually was so old it only had a non-polarized, non-grounding plug on it. But a lot of the equipment, that's what it had on it for input wiring anyways. So all right, we're going to call this a wrap. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to either like maybe do maybe you've already seen what some of this stuff sold for, hopefully. If not, maybe I'll do a thing at the end here, a recap. Haven't decided yet how I'm going to close this out. All right, so if you enjoyed looking at this old junk, please give this video a thumbs up and share it. And if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. Take care. Well, guys, I am back from the Hamfest, and I'm going to give you a little report here on what I ended up selling and what didn't sell before I close out the video. So, the Bearcat 550A scanner did not sell. Everything else ended up selling, so without further ado, I'll go down the list here. The Fluke 8021B multimeter and the Fluke 77, I sold the pair of those for $50. The Beckman 6240 multimeter I ended up selling for $50. The Simpson 260 I ended up selling for $5. I probably paid that much for it originally, or maybe even a little more, but I just wanted to, get rid of it. The Simpson 270 was, in much better condition. That one I ended up selling for $45. The Micronta by Radio Shack analog meter, as is condition, I sold that for $5. The Simpson Teledata special ohm meter for phone work, I ended up selling that for $10. The Simpson 390 was that interesting meter that was also a watt meter with the unusual connections on it. I ended up getting $30 for that. The old Bearcat scanner, the Bearcat 210, I was able to get $15 for that. The Hallicrafters SX99 shortwave radio receiver, I ended up selling that for $70. My trusty old AOR 950 scanner, I ended up selling for $40. I actually think I may not have even shown that in the video because that was in my office. So one of the items that I ended up featuring in this video, and I did bring to the show but didn't end up selling, was the Tektronix oscilloscope. That's that 100 megahertz scope with the digital readout on it. And that scope was working perfectly fine. And I brought it to the show, and I was asking 120, and I would have taken as low as 80 for it. And I had one person who was interested in it, and the table I had didn't have power, but I told him what I was asking for it, and I said, you know, if you're interested, we could plug it in and I could show you it can work. We can bring it to one of the wall outlets along the wall. He said, yeah, I'd like to see it work. I brought it over to the wall outlet, plugged it in, proceeded to show him that it was able to use this self-generated internal oscillator to show a waveform on the screen. When I put it on channel B, I couldn't get the waveform to trigger because I had one of the switches in the wrong position. I explained to him that I didn't have my glasses on and couldn't tell which switch it was, at which point he started to go into some kind of a song and dance about aging electrolytics probably being the problem, and he started to beat me up on price. And I mean, I went down to $80, and after that, I just had pretty much had enough. So I said, yeah, I guess this probably isn't going to be the scope for you, because I know it was working perfectly fine. So he was kind of rude. So that was the other reason why I kind of was more than happy to take that scope home. So overall, I had a pretty good experience and a fun time there at that Hamfest. So much so that I'm actually going to go this weekend to another Hamfest. It's going to be a little bit longer drive for me, but I'm going to bring with me everything that didn't sell from this batch. Plus, I'm going to do another batch of stuff. I'm going to bring some of the CB radio collection that I have, because it turns out there's quite a few guys that still bring and sell and buy CB radio stuff at these things. So until next time, if you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. Thank you.